I was sitting in my car outside the grocery store, staring at my banking app, and the number was bigger than it had ever been. $200,000 in net worth. And instead of feeling proud, my stomach did that little drop. Because once you're past the I'm broke stage, the danger isn't ramen noodles anymore. The danger is the normal-looking choices that quietly lock you into stress. Be honest, have you ever hit a money milestone and then immediately wondered if you're about to mess it up? Like, what if I finally built something and then I blow it with one dumb decision? You're not alone, and you're not weak for feeling it. At this stage, the game shifts from survival to protecting momentum, and the stuff that kills wealth usually shows up wearing a smile. Today, we fix cash flow drains, protect compounding, and make big paychecks stick. And I want you to feel how expensive normal can be. An $800 car payment is $9,600 a year. If you invested that $800 a month at about 7% for 20 years, you'd end up with around $415,000. That's the vibe of this whole conversation. These wealth killers don't feel like disasters. They feel like comfort, convenience, and I earned it. One trap is letting your fixed costs grow faster than your income. Housing, cars, insurance, childcare, subscriptions, the stuff that drafts your account even when you're having a rough month. Most people blame fun spending, but fun is rarely the fatal wound. The fatal wound is building a life where your minimum monthly burn is so high that your money can't breathe. If your take-home pay is $6,000 a month and your fixed costs are $4,500, you've got $1,500 left for food, gas, everything, and investing. That's not a plan, that's a tightrope. Now flip it. If fixed costs are $3,000, you've got $3,000 left. Same income, totally different future, because the gap is what buys you options. And this is where people get tricked. They wait for some magical income level where they'll finally start investing hard. But if you build a high-cost lifestyle, first, your raises just feed the machine. Another trap is upgrading your life in a way that's permanent. A one-time splurge is annoying. A new monthly payment is a leash. Let's say your rent jumps by $500 a month because you wanted a nicer place. That's $6,000 a year. At 7%, $6,000 a year invested for 10 years is roughly $83,000. So when you hear people say, I make good money but I still feel broke, this is usually why. The money's coming in, but the floor is rising with it. Here's the weird part. These choices hit hardest right after you've done the hard work. You claw your way to your first $50,000. Then $100,000, and then you accidentally build a life that eats the momentum you just created. If you're sitting around $100,000 to $300,000 in net worth, and your biggest job isn't finding a secret investment, it's avoiding the decisions that turn future investing into whatever's left, because whatever's left is usually nothing. The math doesn't care how motivated you feel. If you invest $1,000 a month for 15 years at about 7% and you land around $317,000, plus regret. A lot of people do the opposite. They get a raise and they immediately lock in a bigger payment so the raise disappears. If you get a 10% raise and your take-home goes up by $500 a month, and you commit all $500 to new bills, you didn't get richer, you just got busier. A cleaner move is splitting raises. Let some of it upgrade your life, sure, but send the other half into investing or debt payoff. Half of $500 is $250 a month. And over 20 years at 7%, that alone can become around $129,000, so you can still have a nice life. You just want the nice life to be built on a wide foundation, not a monthly payment stack that collapses the moment anything changes. If you've been waiting for permission to care about this stuff, consider this your permission. You can have a good life and still refuse the wealth killers that trap you in a paycheck-to-paycheck costume. One common mistake is thinking you can out-earn any lifestyle forever. You can't, because there's always a bigger house, a better trim level, and a new monthly subscription that everybody has now. A better approach is to treat fixed costs like a business expense. If housing plus transportation stays around 1/3 of take-home pay, your life can handle a job change or a bad quarter without turning into a crisis. Transportation is the easiest place to blow it because the dealer sells you the payment, not the price. A 6-year loan that looks like $500 a month can turn into $700 once insurance jumps and tires, brakes, and random repairs show up. That extra $200 a month is $2,400 a year. Invest $200 a month at 7% for 15 years, and you're looking at around $60,000. That's the cost of stretching for a car that was only a little more. Housing can be even worse because it feels like a grown-up move. But a bigger place doesn't just raise rent or the mortgage. It raises furniture, utilities, and the pressure to keep up the vibe. If your housing upgrade adds $700 a month all in, that's $8,400 a year. Over 5 years, that's $42,000 in cash flow you handed away, and now you're stuck because stepping down feels like failure. And if you've ever caught yourself saying, "It's fine, I'm paying it on time," I get it. On-time payments don't mean it was a smart deal, they just mean you're tough enough to carry it. This week, open your last 3 months of bank and card transactions and calculate one number: your fixed cost floor. If your income paused tomorrow, what's the monthly amount that still gets drafted no matter what? If that floor is above half of your take-home, you're in the danger zone. Not because you're failing, but because any surprise pushes you toward borrowing, and borrowing is where wealth starts leaking. Simple way to shrink the floor is to cut things that feel small but behave like fixed costs. Subscriptions, add-ons, warranties, and the "I'll cancel later" stuff that quietly turns into $100 or $200 a month. $200 a month doesn't feel like a crisis. But at 7% for 20 years, $200 a month becomes around $104,000. That's a future emergency fund, a chunk of a down payment, or a year of freedom. The other stealth killer is cash that never gets a job. People keep $30, $40, even $60,000 sitting in checking because it feels safe, and then they wonder why they feel stuck. You do need cash, just not endless cash. 3 to 6 months of essential expenses is a strong target for most people with stable income. And everything above that should have an assignment. And that emergency fund isn't there to make you rich. It's there so you don't touch your investments when the market's down and you're stressed out. If you've got a 4-month cushion and the market drops 20%, you can shrug and keep buying. If you've got 2 weeks of cash, that same drop feels like an emergency, and emergencies make people sell at the worst time. If you're holding $50,000 in cash when you only need $20,000, that extra $30,000 isn't harmless. At 7%, $30,000 could average about $2,100 a year over time. Cash drag is especially brutal when you're in your 20s and 30s because those are the compounding years. Every year you wait is a year you can't get back, even if you make up for it later. Another common mistake is confusing having money with being safe. Being safe is having a plan that keeps you safe even when you're tired, distracted, or stressed. That plan usually looks boring. Automatic investing, simple diversification, and rules you don't break. When you've got systems, you don't have to win 1,000 tiny battles in your head. Also, don't get hypnotized by return chasing. A 1% difference in returns is nice, but a 5% difference in savings rate is life-changing. If you invest $500 a month versus $1,000 a month for 15 years at 7%, you're talking about roughly $158,000 versus about $317,000. Same market, different behavior, completely different outcome. Now, the wealth killer that blindsides people right when they start investing seriously is emotional decision-making. Money swings start to feel personal. Quick pause. If this breakdown is helping your money path feel clearer, hit subscribe. I make calm, honest, deep dives like this every week. I knew a guy I'll call Marcus. He had about $150,000 invested, and then the market slid and his balance dropped around 20%. That's $30,000 that looks like it vanished, and it messed with his sleep. He sold a chunk so he could breathe. Then the market bounced and he bought back in higher because he didn't want to miss out. He didn't just lose money, he lost time. And time is the part you can't replace. The danger isn't the dip. The danger is reacting to the dip. Here's the part people hate hearing. You can't have stock market returns without stock market feelings. Volatility is the entry fee. If you're checking your portfolio every day, you're basically inviting fear into the room. Try checking monthly or even quarterly and let the system do its thing. And the most expensive habit in investing is hopping strategies. Every time you reset your plan, you reset compounding. So decide your risk level while you're calm. If this money won't be touched for 10 years or more, keeping most of it in broad stock index funds has historically rewarded patience more than cleverness. If you want one grown-up move here, make it rebalancing. Once a year, bring your mix back to your target and then go live your life. That's it. People try to trade their way to peace, but peace usually comes from having a plan you don't touch. This week, set up automatic contributions to your investing accounts and set them to increase by 1% every 6 months. That tiny ramp-up is how a lot of people go from "I'm saving" to "I'm building wealth" without feeling deprived. The next emotional killer is shiny object syndrome. Somebody posts a screenshot of a huge gain, and your boring plan suddenly feels like you're missing the party. The real problem isn't curiosity. The problem is concentration. When you bet too much on one outcome, your money stops being a tool and starts being a source of anxiety. If you want a small play bucket, keep it small. 5% is enough to keep it fun without letting it burn your future. Here's a quick sanity check. If one position dropping by 50% would change your life, you're overexposed. If it would be annoying but not catastrophic, you're probably sized right. Then there's the debt trap. That shows up in new packaging. Credit cards at 24%, buy now pay later plans stacked on top of each other, and 0% offers that turn into a monster if you miss one deadline. Those payments look tiny in isolation. 30 here, 80 there, 200 over there. Put them together and you've quietly built a second rent. High-interest debt compounds against you at the exact moment you're trying to build momentum. It's like jogging with a weighted vest you didn't agree to wear. And look, sometimes life hits you with layoffs, medical bills, or a family emergency, and it's not always something you could have controlled. That's why the goal isn't perfection. It's resilience. You want a setup where a bad month doesn't turn into a bad decade. Here's a sneaky one that sounds responsible. Throwing extra money at low-interest debt while underinvesting for the long run, just because debt makes you nervous. If your mortgage is around 3 or 4%, and you're skipping retirement contributions that get an employer match, you're turning down free money to feel emotionally cleaner. Employer match dollars are one of the few instant wins in personal finance. A 50% match on 6% of pay is an immediate return that markets can't promise. So if you're choosing between extra principal and grabbing the match usually wins. Order matters. After that, you can get more strategic. High-interest debt, like anything above about 7 or 8%, usually deserves aggressive payoff because it's a guaranteed drag. Lower-rate debt can be more of a balanced decision, especially if paying it down would stop you from investing consistently. Now, even if you avoid the spending traps and the emotional traps, people still lose wealth through structural leaks. The stuff that doesn't feel dramatic but adds up. One leak is taxes you didn't plan for. As your income climbs, every extra dollar doesn't land the same, and if you ignore tax-advantaged accounts, you're volunteering to pay more than you need to. If you're in a 22% federal bracket, a $1,000 pre-tax contribution isn't really costing you $1,000 in take-home. It might cost you closer to $780, because some of it would have gone to taxes anyway. And if you're investing outside retirement accounts, taxes still matter. Holding investments longer can turn short-term taxes into long-term capital gains rates, which can keep more money in your pocket without changing your strategy. For a lot of people, a simple order works. Contribute enough to your employer plan to get the match, then use an IRA if you qualify, then go back and fill up the employer plan. Another leak is fees that feel tiny until you zoom out. A 1% fee sounds like nothing, but on a $500,000 portfolio, it's $5,000 a year, every year, whether the year was good or ugly. $5,000 a year invested at 7% for 20 years is around $205,000. That's what tiny can cost you. So when you're choosing funds or advisors, you're not just choosing service. You're choosing whether you keep or donate a pile of money over time. Here's a simple way to tell if you're safe or shaky. If fixed costs are under half of take-home, your emergency fund covers at least 3 months, and you're investing at least 15%, you're in a solid lane. If fixed costs are over 60%, you've got less than 1 month in cash, and you're investing under 10%, you're in the danger lane, even if your salary looks impressive. Let's run one example. Say you take home $8,000 a month. If fixed costs are $5,000, you can invest $2,000 and still have a buffer. But if fixed costs are $7,000, you're one problem away from borrowing. The move isn't to live like a monk. The move is to protect the gap between what you earn and what you need, because that gap is where wealth is born. Another structural killer is keeping everything scattered. Old retirement plans, random brokerages, 5 apps, and no single view of what you actually own. That's how people drift into dumb allocations and duplicate fees without noticing. And it also makes it way easier to ignore your plan because it feels confusing. This week, put your entire financial life on one page. List your accounts, balances, interest rates, and what each account is for. If you can't explain what a bucket is supposed to do, it's probably doing nothing. Once you've got the one-page view, set 3 rules you don't break. One for spending, one for investing, and one for debt, written in plain English. For spending, you might decide you won't add a new fixed monthly payment unless your investing amount also goes up. For investing, you might decide you buy every month no matter what the headlines say. For debt, you might decide no high-interest balance ever carries over. Those rules sound basic, but that's why they work. Most wealth isn't built by genius. It's built by avoiding the obvious stupid stuff over and over for a long time. Once you've built some real net worth, the biggest wins come from not stepping on rakes, financing toys you don't need, letting fixed costs creep up, or making a panic move because a headline scared you. You don't need to be fearless. You just need guardrails. If progress feels slow right now, that's normal. Compounding looks boring, then it looks unfair. And the difference is usually just time plus consistency. Remember that $800 payment turning into around $415,000 over 20 years. Small monthly choices multiplied by time decide who ends up free. Keep your fixed costs in a range that gives you oxygen. Automate investing so emotions don't get a vote. Use taxes and low fees so more of what you earn stays yours. And when you're thinking about an upgrade, run one simple test. After the upgrade, can you still invest the same amount you were investing, plus at least a little more? If the answer is no, it's not an upgrade, it's a trade. Even a small little more stacks fast. Add $300 a month and over 20 years at 7%, you're looking at roughly $154,000. That's why protecting the gap matters more than chasing the perfect stock. Do that, and you won't just avoid wealth killers. You'll build momentum that makes the next 100,000 feel easier than the last. If you're feeling behind, remember this: getting your fixed costs under control and investing consistently is already rare. Even a net worth of $50,000 means you've got something to protect and grow. Keep stacking boring wins, and a few years from now, you'll look back and be glad you didn't blink today. You don't need a perfect plan, you need a durable one. Because durable beats brilliant when life gets messy. Stay consistent, keep the gap alive, and let time do the heavy lifting. Next time, I'll show you the simple money scorecard I use to decide when you can safely upgrade your lifestyle without sabotaging your future. If this kind of calm money math is what you've been missing, this channel is built for you. Subscribe and I'll help you build quiet financial strength week by week.